If you're over 40 and wondering what actually attracts women your age, not what worked when you were 25, you're asking the right question. Because here's the truth. What women find attractive in a mature man is completely different from what they found appealing in younger guys. After years of talking to women about what really catches their attention when they see a well-dressed man over 40, one thing became very clear, and it might surprise you. It's not about looking younger. It's not about flashy designer brands. And it's definitely not about dressing like someone half your age. The fact that you're here tells me you already understand something important. Real confidence and attractiveness come from presenting the best version of yourself, not trying to be someone you're not. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 10 specific things women consistently say they find most attractive in men over 40. These aren't just my opinions. These are based on real conversations with women who appreciate mature, confident, well-put-together men. And here's the best part. Every single one of these is achievable. It doesn't matter your budget, your body type, or your current style level. This isn't about spending more, it's about choosing better. Let's get into it. 1. A perfectly fitted white dress shirt. It may seem like a small detail, but many aspects of a mature man's attractiveness are decided by details exactly like this. When you see a shirt with shoulders that drop, a collar that gaps, a chest that pulls, or excess fabric around the sides, the first thing people feel is usually not, "This shirt looks bad." They simply feel that something is off. Something lacks precision, lacks control, and that is what actually matters. People form impressions extremely quickly based on clothing, even when the face is not visible. A study from the University of Hertfordshire showed participants the same man in two nearly identical outfits, differing only in tailoring quality and sharpness of detail. The result was clear. The better-fitted version was consistently rated higher in confidence, success, flexibility, and even perceived income, despite viewers having only a few seconds to look. In other words, people don't need to hear you speak before they begin evaluating you. They've already read the signal from your level of fit and refinement. This happens because clothing doesn't only affect how others see you. It feeds back into your own internal state. Research on enclothed cognition by Haho Adam and Adam Galinsky shows that what you wear can influence your psychological processes through both the symbolic meaning of the clothing and the physical experience of wearing it. In their study, simply wearing clothing associated with precision and professionalism improved attention levels. At a fundamental level, when your body feels aligned, contained, and stable in what you're wearing, your mind tends to follow with greater focus and self-control. That's why a perfectly fitted white shirt doesn't just make you look better. It changes how you behave. You stand straighter because the shoulders sit where they should. You stop making small unconscious adjustments, pulling at the collar, fixing the sleeves, smoothing the front, because nothing is out of place. You sit without the shirt ballooning awkwardly. You walk without the distraction of something too tight or too loose. These small corrections accumulate into something larger: composure. Women rarely describe this in technical terms like shoulder alignment or fabric drape. They simply say the man looks clean, grounded, reliable, and composed. But what they are responding to at a deeper level is the sense that this man has internal order. He does not allow himself to fall into carelessness. There's a useful observation often made in modern menswear. You don't look more rebellious or effortless by letting everything become loose and disordered. Most of the time, you simply look careless, and that line becomes very clear with age. In youth, a certain level of messiness can still be read as spontaneity. After 40, it is more often read as lack of discipline. So when you look at your own shirt and notice that the shoulders don't sit right, the collar doesn't hold, the sleeves extend past your wrist bone, or the body doesn't follow your shape, what you should understand is not that you need more expensive clothes. What you need to understand is that the signal you're sending does not match the man you intend to be perceived as. And once you see that, the next step becomes simple. You don't need 10 new shirts. You need one that is right. Start with the shoulders, because that's the least forgiving element. Then the collar, because it frames your face. Then the chest and waist, so the shirt follows your body instead of hanging off it. Finally, the sleeve and overall length, so everything ends exactly where it should. A good white shirt shouldn't draw attention to itself. It should make people feel that the man wearing it is in order. There's a story told in GQ about Brunello Cucinelli. Journalist Michael Paterniti entered that world after years of what he described as sloppy casual dressing, old clothes, oversized fits, habits so relaxed that he eventually realized he no longer knew how to dress properly even for formal situations. What he discovered wasn't that clothing is meant to impress. What he discovered is that proper clothing can restore a man's sense of dignity and correctness in how he presents himself. Cucinelli calls this dignity, and emphasizes that it lives in small details. In how a garment, a seam, a silhouette can bring a man back into alignment with himself. That is why a well-fitted white shirt carries weight. It doesn't try to make you look younger. It doesn't try to make you stand out. It simply returns you to your proper position, a man who understands himself, knows his limits, knows his standards, and does not negotiate with carelessness. Tom Ford once described well-dressed clothing as a kind of armor. That idea holds true for a mature man, not because you are hiding anything, but because when everything on you is in place, you gain the space to remain composed, and in a stoic sense. That is what matters, not trying to impress, but not allowing unnecessary disorder to interfere with your presence. So if you are going to start with one piece, start here. A perfectly fitted white dress shirt doesn't turn you into someone else. It simply reveals the best version of who you already are. 2. Well-fitted dark jeans that match your age. At a certain point, how you dress casually begins to matter more than how you dress formally. Because casual is where there's no script, no dress code to rely on. What you choose in those moments reflects who you are without structure. And this is where many men get it wrong. When you see a man over 40 wearing distressed jeans, overly skinny cuts, loud logos, or anything that looks like it belongs to someone half his age, the reaction is rarely admiration. It feels misaligned, not because the clothes are inherently bad, but because they don't match the man. On the other end, when the jeans are too loose, shapeless, or outdated, the signal shifts in a different direction. It suggests withdrawal, a lack of attention, a quiet decision to stop refining. People don't consciously say these things, but they feel them. Human perception is built around coherence. When what you wear aligns with your age, your posture, and your presence, the mind reads it as stability. When it doesn't, it creates friction. Dark, well-fitted jeans sit right in that middle ground. They don't try to impress. They don't try to compensate. They simply follow the body in a clean, controlled way. A straight or slightly slim cut that respects your natural shape. A mid-rise that sits at your waist instead of dropping onto your hips. Fabric that moves with you, not against you. When that alignment is right, something subtle changes. You walk without adjusting. You sit without excess fabric folding awkwardly. You don't feel the need to check how you look, because nothing feels off. And that absence of friction translates into something more noticeable than style: ease. There's a reason men who are consistently perceived as grounded and attractive rarely deviate far from this formula. Ryan Reynolds is a clear example. Off camera, he's almost always in dark, clean denim, never flashy, never exaggerated. The fit is precise, but not tight. The look is relaxed, but never careless. There's no attempt to look younger than he is. Just an understanding of what works, repeated consistently. He once said something that captures this mindset. Style is about knowing what fits your life, not chasing what's trending. That's exactly the distinction. When jeans are too young, they look like you're chasing something behind you. When they're too loose or outdated, they look like you've stopped paying attention. But when they're right, they disappear into the background, and what remains is you. There's also a practical layer to this that most men overlook. Quality denim holds its structure. It doesn't collapse after a few wears. It develops character instead of just wearing out. Over time, it begins to reflect how you move, how you live. Cheap denim does the opposite. It loses shape, fades unevenly, and subtly erodes the sharpness of your appearance. And again, people may not verbalize this, but they register it. So when you look at your jeans and notice they pull at the thighs, stack awkwardly at the ankle, sit too low, or lose shape throughout the day, what you're really seeing is misalignment. Not just in fit, but in signal. And once you recognize that, the solution is straightforward. You don't need a wardrobe overhaul. You need a pair that sits where it should, follows your body without clinging, and holds its form throughout the day. Dark indigo or black, clean, no distressing, no unnecessary detail. Because at this stage, style isn't about standing out. It's about removing everything that doesn't belong. A well-fitted pair of dark jeans does exactly that. It allows you to look relaxed without looking careless, put together without looking rigid, present without trying to prove anything. And that balance, more than anything else, is what people respond to. 3. A quality leather jacket that fits like it was made for you. There are certain pieces that don't just change how you look. They change how you're perceived before you say a word. A leather jacket is one of those pieces. But only when it's right. When you see a man wearing a leather jacket that's too tight, overly detailed, overly biker, or trying too hard to look edgy, the reaction is immediate, even if it's not spoken. It feels like an attempt, like something is being projected rather than expressed. And people can sense the difference. On the other hand, when the jacket fits cleanly, shoulders aligned, sleeves ending where they should, the body following your natural frame without pulling or excess, it doesn't demand attention. It holds it. There's a psychological reason for this. Clothing that exaggerates signals usually creates resistance. The brain reads it as inconsistency. But clothing that aligns with the wearer, without excess, gets processed as authenticity. And authenticity is always more stable than performance. A well-chosen leather jacket sits in that space. It carries a quiet sense of strength, a controlled edge, not rebellion for the sake of being seen, but a kind of independence that doesn't need explanation. You can see this clearly in real life. A man walks into a room wearing a simple leather jacket. No loud branding, no aggressive styling, just clean lines, quality material, and a fit that follows his body. He doesn't adjust it, he doesn't perform with it, but people notice. Not because it's loud. Because it feels settled. This is something David Beckham has understood for years. His leather jackets are almost always minimal, bomber or clean moto styles. In black or deep brown. Fitted close but never tight. There's no sense that he's trying to look younger. Just a consistency in how he presents himself. He once said, "Wear what feels right. And don't overthink it." That simplicity is not accidental. It's discipline. Because the line between a leather jacket that adds presence and one that looks like a midlife reaction is very thin. It comes down to 3 things: fit, restraint, and material. Fit determines whether the jacket becomes part of your body or sits on top of it. Restraint determines whether it supports your presence or competes with it. And material determines whether it ages with you or against you. Cheap leather tries to look good immediately. It shines too much. It feels artificial. And over time, it breaks down. Good leather does the opposite. It starts understated. It softens, develops texture, gains character. It reflects time instead of fighting it. And that mirrors something deeper. At a certain point, style is no longer about adding more. It's about removing anything that feels forced. So when you look at a leather jacket and it feels too loud, too heavy, too detailed, or disconnected from how you actually live, that's the signal. Not that the jacket is wrong, but that it's not aligned with you. And once you see that, the next step is simple. Choose something that could exist in your life without explanation. A clean bomber, a minimal moto, a racing style without excess detail. Black if you want structure, brown if you want warmth. Nothing exaggerated, nothing that asks for attention. Because when a leather jacket is right, it doesn't make you look younger. It makes you look grounded. It suggests that you're comfortable with a bit of edge, but you don't need to prove it. And that quiet control is what people respond to. Not the jacket itself, but the man who doesn't need it to say anything for him. 4. A cashmere or merino wool sweater that feels as good as it looks. There are things people notice without consciously registering them. Texture is one of them. When you see a man wearing a sweater that looks rough, synthetic, or slightly worn out, the reaction isn't immediate rejection. It's subtler than that. It just doesn't invite attention. It doesn't create a sense of ease. But when the material looks soft, structured, and refined, something shifts. You don't need to touch it to understand it. The brain fills in the experience. There's a psychological principle behind this. Humans constantly predict sensory input based on visual cues. When something looks soft, warm, and well-made, the mind associates it with comfort, stability, and care. And those associations don't stay on the clothing, they transfer to the person wearing it. That's why a high-quality sweater does more than add warmth. It changes the emotional tone of how you're perceived. When the fit is right, following your body without clinging or hanging, it creates a clean silhouette. Not sharp like tailoring, but controlled, relaxed, but not loose. That balance is difficult to achieve. And that's exactly why it stands out. You can see this in everyday situations. A man sits across from you wearing a simple navy merino sweater. No logos, no patterns, just a clean line across the shoulders. Sleeves ending exactly where they should. Fabric holding its shape without collapsing. He's not dressed up, but he doesn't look casual either. He looks settled. There's no distraction in what he's wearing. And because of that, your attention stays on him. This is something Daniel Craig embodies consistently. Especially in his later years as James Bond. Off-screen and on-screen, he often appears in simple knitwear, cashmere or fine wool. Close-fitting but not tight. In colors that don't demand attention. The effect isn't dramatic, it's controlled. He once said, "Comfort doesn't mean careless." That distinction matters. Because many men confuse comfort with looseness. They choose sweaters that are too large, too heavy, or made from materials that don't hold structure. Over time, those choices soften their entire presence, not in a calm way, but in a diminished one. On the other side, overly tight or overly styled pieces create tension. They look like effort. A well-made sweater avoids both extremes. It rests on the body. It doesn't fight it. And that has a direct effect on how you carry yourself. When the material feels good, you stop being aware of it. You don't adjust it. You don't compensate for it. Your movements stay natural. Your posture stays relaxed but upright. And that combination, relaxed control, is what people read as quiet confidence. There's also something else happening over time. Natural materials like cashmere and merino wool don't degrade the same way synthetic fabrics do. They soften. They develop character. They begin to reflect how you wear them, not just how they were made. Cheap materials tend to lose shape, pill unevenly, and signal decline. Quality materials age with consistency. And that consistency reinforces the impression that you maintain standards. So when you look at your sweater and it feels bulky, loses shape throughout the day, or looks slightly off even when new, what you're seeing is not just a clothing issue. It's a signal mismatch. And once you recognize that, the correction is simple. Choose pieces that feel as controlled as they look. Crew necks that frame the upper body cleanly. Colors that support your tone instead of competing with it, navy, charcoal, deep green, muted earth tones. Materials that hold form without stiffness. Nothing loud, nothing that tries to prove taste. Because at this level, taste isn't something you show. It's something people sense. A good sweater doesn't make you stand out. It makes people feel comfortable in your presence. And that, more than anything, is what stays. 5. A perfectly tailored suit that makes you look like a leading man. There are moments in life where casual is no longer enough. And in those moments, a suit doesn't just dress you, it defines how seriously you are taken. But only when it's right. When you see a man in a suit with oversized shoulders, sleeves that swallow his hands, trousers bunching at the ankles, or a jacket that hangs without structure, the reaction is immediate, even if unspoken. It doesn't feel like authority. It feels like something borrowed, something not fully owned. Because a suit amplifies everything. If it fits poorly, it magnifies uncertainty. If it fits precisely, it reinforces control. This is why tailoring matters more than the suit itself. The human brain is extremely sensitive to proportion. When lines are clean, shoulders aligned, jacket length balanced, trousers falling naturally, the entire figure appears more stable, more deliberate. That visual stability translates directly into perceived competence. And competence, more than style, is what people respond to in formal settings. You can see this clearly in real life. Two men walk into the same room wearing suits. One is wearing something expensive but slightly off, the shoulders too wide, the sleeves a bit long, the trousers pulling at the shoes. The other is wearing a simpler suit. But everything sits exactly where it should. People rarely say, "This one has better tailoring." They simply gravitate toward the second man. Because nothing about him needs correction. That absence of friction becomes presence. This is something Keanu Reeves demonstrates in a quiet way. He's not known for flashy fashion. But when he wears a suit, it fits his frame, never exaggerated, never overstyled. There's no sense of performance. Just alignment. He once said, "Simple is usually better." And in the context of a suit, that becomes very literal. Because the suit itself is already a strong signal. It doesn't need help. What it needs is precision. The shoulders must sit exactly where your body ends. This cannot be fixed later. The jacket length should balance your proportions, usually ending around your knuckles. The trousers should rest cleanly with minimal break. Not stacking, not floating. These aren't aesthetic choices. They are structural ones. When they're right, you don't think about the suit. And more importantly, neither does anyone else. They think about you. There's also a deeper psychological layer here. Formal clothing carries symbolic weight, authority, responsibility, status. When your body moves comfortably inside that structure, it reinforces those qualities internally. You stand differently. You speak more deliberately. You occupy space with less hesitation. But when the suit fights your body, too tight, too loose, too long, you feel it constantly. And that subtle discomfort leaks into how you carry yourself. People may not know why, but they feel it. That's why a well-tailored suit doesn't just change your appearance. It stabilizes your presence. There's a reason men who command attention in high-stakes environments rarely experiment with their suits. They refine them, again and again, until nothing is left to adjust. Because at that level, style is not about creativity. It's about removing error. So when you look at your suit and notice that something feels slightly off, the sleeves, the shoulders, the way the trousers fall, that's not a small detail. That's the signal breaking. And once you understand that, the path forward is simple. You don't need more suits. You need one that fits exactly. Navy, charcoal, clean lines, quality wool that holds shape. Tailored to your frame, not to a trend, not to a brand, but to you. Because when a suit is right, it doesn't make you look dressed up. It makes you look established. It suggests that you understand where you are, what the moment requires, and how to meet it, without excess, without noise. And that, more than anything, is what people trust. Not the suit, but the man who fits into it without effort. 6. Quality boots that suggest both style and substance. There are details most men underestimate. Footwear is one of them. Because people don't always look directly at your shoes, but they register them. Quietly, instantly, and often more honestly than anything else you wear. When you see a man wearing worn-out sneakers, overly flashy shoes, or something that doesn't match the rest of his outfit, the reaction isn't dramatic. It's subtle. It creates a slight disconnect. Something feels unfinished. But when the footwear is solid, clean lines, good material, appropriate for the setting, the entire impression stabilizes. Boots do this particularly well. Not because they are loud, but because they carry a certain weight, visually and psychologically. When you see a man wearing a well-made pair of boots, something registers almost immediately: groundedness. There's a sense that he is steady, practical, capable. Not in a performative way, but in a way that doesn't need to be explained. That perception isn't random. Humans associate certain objects with traits. Boots, especially traditional styles, are historically tied to work, durability, and movement across real environments, not controlled, polished ones. When those associations meet clean design and modern fit, they create a very specific signal. Someone who can handle both structure and unpredictability. You can see this in everyday life. A man walks into a space wearing dark jeans, a simple jacket, and a pair of well-made leather boots. Nothing about the outfit is loud, but the foundation is strong. The boots anchor everything else. He doesn't move lightly. He doesn't shuffle. His steps are firm, controlled, and that alone changes how people perceive him. Not because of fashion, because of presence. This is something Chris Hemsworth carries naturally. Off-screen, he's often seen in simple boots, Chelsea, lace-up, or work-inspired styles. Nothing exaggerated, just solid construction, good leather, and consistency. There's no sense that he's trying to style the boots. They simply fit into how he lives. He once said, "I like things that last." That mindset shows. Because good boots are not about immediate impact. They are about longevity. Cheap shoes try to look sharp at first, but they break down quickly. The leather creases poorly, the sole wears unevenly, and over time, they start to signal neglect, even if you didn't intend it. Quality boots do the opposite. They hold structure. They age with character. The leather softens but doesn't collapse. The shape remains intact. They begin to reflect how you move, not just how they were made. And that continuity matters. Because consistency in small details builds trust in larger ones. So when you look at your footwear and notice that it feels light in the wrong way, loses shape, looks overly polished or overly worn, or simply doesn't match the rest of how you present yourself, what you're seeing is a break in foundation. Not just visually, but symbolically. And once you recognize that, the adjustment is simple. Choose something that can carry weight without drawing attention. Chelsea boots for clean minimalism. Desert boots for relaxed structure. Work-inspired boots for something more grounded. Brown for warmth. Black for precision. Nothing exaggerated. Nothing that tries to stand out. Because when boots are right, they don't compete with your outfit. They support it. They allow everything above them to feel more intentional, more complete. And more importantly, they change how you move. You walk with more certainty. You plant your steps instead of drifting through them. You feel the ground differently. And people notice that, without realizing why. Because at a certain level, style is no longer about what people see. It's about what they sense. And a good pair of boots communicates something very specific. You are grounded, you are prepared, and you are not easily moved. 7. A quality watch that reflects your personal standard. There are very few accessories a man needs. A watch is one of the rare ones that still matters. Not because of function, but because of what it signals. When you see a man wearing a watch that's oversized, overly flashy, or clearly chosen to impress, the reaction is immediate, even if subtle. It feels like an announcement, like something is being projected outward. And projection always carries a kind of instability. On the other hand, when the watch is restrained, well-proportioned, clean, aligned with the man wearing it, it doesn't ask to be noticed. But it is. Because it feels intentional. There's a psychological reason behind this. Humans associate tools with values. A watch, in particular, has always been tied to time, discipline, and awareness. When it appears on someone in a controlled, understated way, it signals something deeper than style. It suggests that the person understands time and respects it. And that immediately elevates how they are perceived. You can see this in real situations. During a conversation, a man checks the time, not abruptly, not repeatedly, but once, calmly. The gesture is small, but if the watch itself is well chosen, proportionate, and quiet, the movement doesn't break the moment. It reinforces it. There's no sense of distraction, no sense of urgency. Only awareness. This is something Barack Obama demonstrated consistently during his presidency. He wore the same simple, understated watch for years, not large, not flashy, not changing with trends. It wasn't there to impress. It was there because it fit. Because it matched the way he operated. He once said, "Focus your time on what matters." That philosophy extends beyond how time is spent. It reflects in how it is carried. Because a watch, at this stage, is not about telling time. It's about how you relate to it. An overly large watch disrupts proportion. It pulls attention to itself. It creates imbalance in your overall presence. A cheap or poorly made watch does something else. It introduces inconsistency. It suggests that details are negotiable. But a well-chosen watch does neither. It sits where it should. It complements your wrist, your build, your overall frame. It doesn't compete with what you're wearing. It supports it. And more importantly, it remains consistent. Because consistency is what people trust. You'll notice that men who carry authority rarely rotate through exaggerated pieces. They find one that works, and they stay with it. Over time, that object becomes part of their identity. Not because it's expensive, but because it's stable. There's also something internal that happens. When you wear something that is proportionate, well made, and aligned with your standard, you stop thinking about it. You don't adjust it. You don't check it unnecessarily. It becomes part of your rhythm. And that rhythm reflects outward. Your gestures slow down. Your movements become more deliberate. You don't rush. And in a world that constantly accelerates, that alone creates contrast. So when you look at your watch and it feels too loud, too large, too decorative, or disconnected from how you actually live, what you're seeing is not just a style issue. It's a misalignment of signal. And once you see that, the correction is simple. Choose something that reflects your standard, not your desire to be seen. A clean dress watch, a restrained sport watch, proportionate to your wrist, neutral in tone, built to last. Nothing excessive. Because when a watch is right, it doesn't elevate your outfit. It stabilizes your presence. It suggests that you understand time, not as something to chase, but as something to manage. And that quiet control is what people respond to. Not the watch, but the man who wears it without needing it to speak for him. 8. A crisp, clean white t-shirt that fits like it was made for you. At a certain level, simplicity stops being simple. It becomes exposed. Because when there's nothing to hide behind, no layers, no structure, no detail, what remains is just you. And that's why a white t-shirt is one of the most revealing things a man can wear. When you see a t-shirt that's too tight, clinging to the body in the wrong places, or too loose, hanging without shape, the reaction is immediate. It feels either forced or careless. There's no balance. But when it fits correctly, following the natural line of the shoulders, sitting clean at the chest, falling naturally at the waist, it creates something very different. It disappears. And in that absence, the person becomes the focus. There's a psychological principle behind this. The human mind is drawn to clarity. When visual noise is reduced, no patterns, no distractions, no excess detail, the brain processes the image faster and with less effort. That ease of processing is often experienced as attractiveness. In other words, when something is simple but precise, it feels right. A well-fitted white t-shirt operates exactly in that space. It doesn't add anything. It removes everything unnecessary. You can see this clearly in real life. A man standing in a simple white t-shirt and dark jeans. No logos, no branding, no attempt to stand out. But the fit is exact. The fabric holds its shape. The neckline sits flat. The sleeves end at just the right point on the arm. Nothing about it calls attention. And yet, people look. Not because of what he's wearing, but because nothing is getting in the way of how he presents himself. This is something Steve McQueen embodied effortlessly. His style was built on pieces that were almost invisible in their simplicity: white t-shirts, denim, jackets, but the fit was always precise. The proportions always controlled. He once said, "I'm not a fashion guy. I just know what works." And that's exactly the point. Because a white t-shirt doesn't give you room to negotiate. It reveals posture. It reveals physical awareness. It reveals whether you understand your own proportions. If the fabric is thin and loses shape, it signals neglect. If it's too heavy or stiff, it looks forced. If the color is too bright or too dull against your skin, it creates imbalance. But when everything aligns, fit, fabric, tone, it creates a kind of quiet precision. And that precision changes how you carry yourself. You don't adjust it. You don't think about it. Your movements stay natural. Your posture holds without effort. And that reads as confidence. Not the loud kind. The kind that doesn't need reinforcement. There's also something deeper happening. At this stage, attractiveness is no longer about adding layers to appear more interesting. It's about removing anything that feels unnecessary. And a well-fitted white t-shirt is the clearest expression of that idea. So when you look at yours and notice that it twists, stretches, fades unevenly, or simply doesn't sit right on your body, what you're seeing is not just a basic item failing. It's a lack of alignment in the simplest form. And once you recognize that, the correction is direct. Choose fewer. Choose better. A t-shirt that holds its structure. A neckline that stays flat. Sleeves that frame the arms without tightening. Length that ends cleanly around the waist. Nothing extra. Because when something is this simple, it either works, or it doesn't. There's no middle ground. And when it does work, it creates something most men overlook. Effortless clarity. It suggests that you don't need complexity to be seen. And that is rare. Not the t-shirt itself, but the man who can wear it without needing anything else. 9. A well-fitted blazer that moves between casual and authority. There are pieces that define a moment. And there are pieces that adapt to it. A blazer belongs to the second category. When you see a man wearing a blazer that is too stiff, too formal, or clearly disconnected from the rest of his outfit, it creates tension. It feels like he's dressed for a different context than the one he's in. And that tension is immediately noticeable. On the other hand, when the blazer fits cleanly, shoulders aligned, length balanced, fabric moving naturally, it doesn't dominate the outfit. It integrates. And that integration creates something more powerful than formality. Control. There's a psychological reason for this. Humans constantly evaluate whether someone understands the environment they are in. When your clothing matches the context without effort, the brain reads it as awareness. And awareness, in social settings, is often interpreted as intelligence and confidence. A well-fitted blazer communicates exactly that. Not because it is formal, but because it is adaptable. You can see this clearly in real life. A man walks into a dinner setting wearing a blazer over a simple t-shirt and dark jeans. Nothing about the outfit is rigid, but the blazer anchors it. It brings structure without removing ease. He doesn't look overdressed. He looks prepared. And that distinction matters. This is something Idris Elba carries consistently. Whether on a red carpet or in everyday appearances, his blazers are rarely loud. Clean lines, strong shoulders, controlled fit, paired sometimes with shirts, sometimes with knitwear, sometimes even with t-shirts. The common factor is not the outfit. It's the balance. He once said, "It's about being comfortable in your own skin." And a blazer, when chosen correctly, supports that, not by adding weight, but by removing uncertainty. Because without structure, casual can drift. Too loose, too undefined, too dependent on the moment. But with a blazer that fits, everything tightens, visually and psychologically. Your posture adjusts slightly. Your movements become more deliberate. You take up space with more clarity. Not because you're trying to, but because nothing is pulling you out of alignment. There's also a structural element most men overlook. A blazer defines the upper body. It creates a frame, shoulders, chest, line of the torso. When that frame is clean, the entire silhouette becomes more stable. But when it's off, shoulders too wide, sleeves too long, body too tight or too loose, it does the opposite. It distorts proportion. It introduces imbalance. And people feel that immediately. Not as a technical flaw, as a lack of control. So when you look at your blazer and it feels stiff, restricts movement, hangs awkwardly, or doesn't sit naturally over what you're wearing, what you're seeing is not just a styling issue. It's a failure to integrate. And once you understand that, the solution is simple. Choose something that can move with you, not against you. Soft structure, natural shoulders, fabric that follows your body instead of holding it rigid, colors that adapt, navy, charcoal, muted tones that don't demand attention. A two-button blazer, clean lines, no excess detail. Something that works with trousers, with jeans, with a t-shirt, with a shirt. Because versatility is not about having options. It's about having pieces that don't break under different conditions. And that's what a good blazer does. It doesn't elevate you artificially. It stabilizes you across situations. It suggests that you understand where you are, what is required, and how to meet it, without shifting your identity to match the moment. And that, more than anything, is what people trust. Not the blazer, but the man who remains consistent inside it. 10. Confidence expressed through grooming and attention to detail. At the end of everything, none of the individual pieces matter on their own. What people respond to is how everything comes together. When you see a man whose hair is unkempt, skin neglected, nails untrimmed, clothes slightly wrinkled, or details just a little off. The reaction is rarely strong, but it is consistent. It creates a low-level signal of disorder. Not dramatic, but enough to be felt. On the other hand, when everything is in place, not perfect, not excessive, just consistent, the impression shifts immediately. There is a sense of control. And control, when it appears effortless, becomes confidence. There's a psychological reason for this. Humans are highly sensitive to patterns. When multiple small elements align, clean grooming, well-fitted clothes, maintained details, the brain reads it as internal order. And internal order is often interpreted as reliability. People trust what feels consistent. You can see this in everyday life. A man walks into a room. His haircut is clean, not styled aggressively. Just maintained. His skin looks healthy. His clothes are simple, but they sit correctly. Nothing stands out individually. But nothing is off. And because of that, attention stays with him. Not because he's trying to impress. Because nothing needs fixing. This is something David Gandy has built his entire presence around. His style is never extreme. His grooming is never exaggerated. But everything is controlled: hair, skin, posture, clothing, details. There is no break in the signal. He once said, "It's the small details that make the difference." And at this level, that's not a cliché. It's structure. Because confidence, in its most stable form, is not loud. It's not created in a moment. It's built through consistency. Through showing up the same way, whether it's a formal event or an ordinary day. Through maintaining standards even when no one is watching. That's what grooming really reflects. Not vanity. Discipline. And people can feel the difference. There's also something internal happening here that often gets overlooked. When you know your appearance is in order, your mind becomes quieter. You don't second guess how you look. You don't adjust constantly. You don't hesitate in small interactions. That absence of internal noise creates presence. And presence is what people respond to. Not effort. Not perfection. But stability. So when you notice that your grooming is inconsistent, hair left too long, skin neglected, clothes slightly worn, small details overlooked, that's not just a surface issue. It's a break in continuity. And once you recognize that, the correction is straightforward. Not more products, not more time. Just higher standards. Keep your hair clean and maintained. Your skin cared for. Your nails trimmed. Your clothes clean, fitted, and in good condition. Not to impress, but to eliminate friction. Because at this stage, attractiveness is not about adding layers. It's about removing anything that creates doubt. There's a line often attributed to Marcus Aurelius. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Applied here, it becomes very simple. Stop thinking about how to appear confident. Remove what contradicts it. When everything aligns, your grooming, your clothing, your posture, your presence, confidence is no longer something you project. It's something that remains. Quiet, stable, unforced. And that is what people trust. Not the individual pieces. But the man who has nothing out of place and nothing to prove. When you step back and look at all of this, you start to see a pattern. None of these pieces are about standing out. None of them are about trends. And none of them are about trying to become someone else. They all point to the same thing. Alignment. When your clothes fit your body. When your choices match your age. When your details are consistent. And when nothing feels forced. The result isn't just style. It's clarity. And clarity is what people respond to. Because when there's nothing distracting, nothing exaggerated, nothing out of place, what remains is something much more stable. Presence. And presence doesn't need to be announced. It's felt. That's why this isn't about rebuilding your entire wardrobe. It's about correcting what's slightly off. One piece at a time. A shirt that fits properly. Jeans that follow your frame. A jacket that belongs to your life. Details that are maintained, not ignored. Because once one thing is right, the next becomes easier to see. And over time, the process becomes automatic. You stop guessing. You stop overthinking. You stop trying to keep up. You simply know what works. And more importantly, you know why it works. At this stage, attractiveness isn't about looking younger. It's about removing everything that creates doubt. Everything that feels like effort. Everything that doesn't belong. Until what remains is consistent, controlled, and unmistakably yours. If this resonates with you, stay with it. Refine it. Because style, at this level, is not something you chase. It's something you settle into. Quietly. Deliberately. Without needing anyone else to confirm it. And when you reach that point, something shifts. Getting dressed is no longer a question. It becomes a decision you've already made. And that, more than anything else, is what confidence actually looks like.